well, let me get this party started. Hey, y'all, this Herman Lo out here again. We coming to you all after the Dallas game. Me and Herman gonna talk about this, but just to make it perfectly clear, like we got some issues today. Me and Herman do. We're gonna clear the air in front of everybody because he's feeling one way and I'm feeling another way. And I got my feelings. My feelings are right here today. So, Herm, you get your feelings off your shoulders first. I want to hear what you got to say.
By all means, age before beauty.
All right, well, good. I'm glad it's age before beauty because, like, again, I need to know what you're talking about, but I guess you'll let me know. But anyway, I'm gonna start.
No. First of all,
because I don't know what you got.
Hold on.
What's wrong with your feelings today?
No, ain't nothing wrong with my feelings. My feelings are in check. Listen, I'm a realist, and I like to stay balanced. And first of all, my birthday is this month. This is October. I'm a Libra. I'm a very balanced person.
It's Herman's birthday month.
I don't like to sit and go too high, too low. I'm always hover somewhere in the middle because that is what keeps complacency in check. And that's what keeps everything in balance and keeps focus. I understand this. This ain't my first rodeo, and it's not your first one either.
Right.
So I'm curious to, I know you're sitting on cloud nine, and everyone's sitting on cloud nine. Right. I get that, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I know for a fact, and if they're not, then it's wrong. I know the coaches are saying, listen, we are doing it, we're getting it done, we're playing well, we're firing on all cylinders, but at the same time, the job is not done. 4 or 5 games into a season does not make a championship. There's still a lot of games to be played. And if we didn't learn anything, all it takes is a player here or there to where it changes the dynamic of a team. It changes the dynamics and the chances of a team to win a division, to be competitive, to go out and have an opportunity for postseason play. I'm not even trying to talk about that right now because this is still a long season. There's still a big bulk of this schedule that still needs to be played. And if we want to go back and break down every single team that they've played so far, I think they've done what they're supposed to do against teams that are in disarray. They've done what they're supposed to do in teams against teams where they outgun them. They have more talent than those teams, and you're winning the games you're supposed to win. You know this better than most, and I know this just as you do. People always say, listen.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, right. They always say whenever you go out, you should beat the teams you're supposed to beat. You should win the games you're supposed to win. And if you do what you're supposed to do, then you should win those games. And I think the Lions have done that. And you look at the teams that they've faced, for the most part, maybe there's another game here or there that could have gone one way or another. But, for the most part, I think, they've done what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and you're right, Herm, and some of the points you're making are great points because you're right that to win a Super Bowl, to get to a Super Bowl, things have to happen for you. You got to be lucky. You got all the stars got to line up. You're absolutely right about that. You're going to catch some breaks throughout the season. You're right, playing against guys that should be there that aren't there because they're injured on the other team and everything. But the key thing that you said to me, right, is you're supposed to take care of business against these teams. And that's what they've done. They were supposed to be going into that game. Me and you didn't talk, but all on talk radio leading up into that game, I said they were supposed to. I wasn't worried about that game because they were supposed to beat them boys like that. Like you say, with their stars missing, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence not being there. Like you said, how beat up they were on the offensive side of the ball. It was really just Dak and CD. That's all they have. They have no run game. So the Lions ain't have to do nothing but pin their ears back and get after them, which they did. So you're right, Herm. They took care of business. But like I say, Herm, and this is a long season, right? So you got to be able to put a little sugar in there every now and then. And my thing is, you got to be able to tell the guys when they went out and did what they were supposed to do. You got to be able to pat them on the back sometime, Herm. And I know a lot of that is going on throughout, and it ain't just the coaches doing that. I mean, you got the media, like you say, you got the fans out here doing that. But I think that the coaching staff over there, Dan Campbell and them, I think they got those guys grounded enough to let them know, man, that this is a one game by one game process. This, you know what I'm saying? I don't think they looking that way. But Herm, you better believe that organization, them boys up top, they saying Super Bowl or bust. Brad has put that out there. And sitting in the locker room, that's what them boys are thinking about. We were thinking about that, Herm. You know that and stuff. So that's what they thinking about. And now, again, like you said, it's a long road. It's a process to get in there. And like you said, we got to be healthy. Aidan, man, that's crushing. That's soul crushing. Because, I don't know how you rebound off of him, especially with Marcus Davenport. The other end, they was counting on opposite of him. He's gone for the year. Now you got Aidan gone. You went from having defensive ends to really not having any impact defensive ends. So that's going to be a challenge. You're right about that. And the teams are going to take advantage of it, just like the Lions took advantage of teams that were missing their guys. So I guess me and you on the same page. I'm not saying that I'm just pushing it all over the edge with these guys. But again, Herm, like I say, man, they've done what they needed to done early in this season, right? So far.
Now, we're agreement there. I think where we were starting to have a bit of disagreement before we got on is right now, a lot of people are crowning this team a certain something. And as we all know, we can go back to Philadelphia last year. We can go back to teams that were supposed to be, San Francisco, and these teams are coming back in this year. All of a sudden you get an injury. You get key players that are down. It changes the dynamics. You get Aidan Hutchinson that goes down. He's a big component of the defensive side of the ball. Every team plans for injuries to some degree. That's why we have starters, we have backups, and then you have people who play backup from there. And when we start talking about the depth chart. So right now, the teams that are most successful, the teams that are championship caliber teams, are always going to be planning for that, because that's why you build the teams that you build. That's why you take your scouting department and you go out and you find the best players and you try and get that depth for your team. Because if you get that, when when something happens like this, something unfortunate happens like we saw with Aidan Hutchinson, you need to bring players in that can take over that role. And then even if that person doesn't have the same caliber of ability or impact, then that's when you start to bring in scheme. You start to bring in different sets. You start to do some things to, whether it's protecting areas where they're now going to be vulnerable, to you're starting to bring in different packages that will create issues for the other teams that they don't know what you're going to do. And all I'm saying is, this is a game. You have so many more games. There's so many things that are going to happen between now and then, good or bad, that you can't predict. So the only thing you can predict is I have to make sure we're prepared. I have to make sure that we have the right mentality and mindset. I have to make sure, and I'm saying this almost from whether you're a head coach, whether you're assistant coach, whether you're management, that you temper it a little bit. And that's all I'm saying. And it's not that you don't pat people on the back. All the times. Coach comes in the locker room, he goes, you know what? That's a great win. That's a great victory. We beat this team. We did this. We did this. Here's a game ball to this player. But as remember, enjoy it today. And then what do they say after that? Get ready for next week.
Yeah, exactly right, Herm. And I think
and you know why they say that though, Lo. You know why they say that, right? Because you can't bring what you've been doing the week before forward. It doesn't work that way. You can only bring the mentality and the mindset of how you prepare and how you get ready.
So you don't think they've been doing that, Herm? You don't. So
absolutely,
look at the San Francisco. So you say
absolutely, they've been doing that, Lo. Absolutely, they've been doing that. All I'm saying is that I just want to make sure the reinforcement is there, because what happens is when the press starts getting involved, when social media gets involved, when the fans get involved, all players are not built the same in terms of focus.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Sometimes you have to make sure you're reeling them back in with that message. And again, I'm not saying that the coaches are not doing that. I'd be very surprised if they're not doing that. I think that's what they're doing. All I'm saying is, when people ask me, it seems like it's like, man, you don't seem like you're over the top about it. No, they're doing what they're supposed to do and what we expect them to do. And yeah, I'm excited for them. I'm happy for them. It's great to see the energy and the excitement around it. But I do understand the game. I understand what can happen if you let your guard down.
Yeah.
That's it.
So no, and I think for what's been encouraging, man, just been like I say, how they just been executing. And like you're saying, they were supposed to do that against Dallas. I mean, I think it was like 7 straight scoring drives, maybe more, that they put up against Dallas. Again, the defense shut Dak down. They turned them over 3-4 times. They did what, like you say, they were supposed to do. Now you got, again, each week presents a different challenge, and we know they got a challenge coming up in the undefeated Minnesota Vikings, so that's going to present a whole different challenge. So even coming off a big win like this, those guys getting refocused in to get ready for another big challenge. Can they get it back up and play at that level that they played at against Dallas? Because it's going to take that and more against the Minnesota Vikings. But again, the blueprint is out there. The blueprint has been laid out there for what the Lions need to do the rest of this season to make sure that they have success and that they end up where they want to go at. Because again, we know the city of Detroit, I think the state of Michigan knows that the expectations, again, are Super Bowl and bust. And Herm, when you want it that way, when you want the expectations or things to be high level and people expect or want you to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, to me, I would rather have that high expectation than for it to be just you coming in and thinking you're mediocre or you're not going to even get to the playoffs this year.
No, that's exactly what it is, and that's what I'm saying. The mindset and the expectation is so high that it is Super Bowl or bust. It's definitely, playoffs is like the low hanging fruit, is what people are looking at around now for this team and the type of caliber of players and the way that they play and the way that they're positioned. And that goes back to being a well coached team. It goes back to seeing that there's consistency upstairs, downstairs, throughout the organization, that they're making moves and wanting to make moves in advance. They're being very proactive in terms of how they go about things. I know they have people on their board right now that they go, hey, if something goes down with this player, these key positions, they're monitoring, they're watching, they're seeing what players and that are available. So that's a competent organization. Yeah. When I look at this, and we can go over now and talk a little bit about the Dallas game if you like. We could talk about Aidan Hutchinson, but to this, I'm just going to be curious to find out, because a lot of people ask me, what do I think about this team? And I go, well, we got to look at where they match up against the other teams that are firing on all cylinders like they are, and the other teams that are playing lights out football like they are. And if you do that, then you go, okay, how does this team compare? Because they're going to have to go through those type of teams, not the teams like Dallas, not like Arizona and teams like that, in order to get into postseason or to get to the Super Bowl or go through the playoffs. Those are the teams that I'm monitoring, and I'm comparing them against those type of teams right now. And it's hard when they don't play each other. You can look at them on paper, you can look at matchups all day, but on paper, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's some intangibles that you cannot gauge until you actually see guys physically go out and play each other. So that's where I'm looking at. And I'm curious, and I don't know if you have kind of your hit list, like who are the teams at the Lions right now? If I had to look at them and say, how would they match up against when I was watching Washington and I was watching Baltimore, how does this team match up against talented teams offensively and defensively, and those that have skill position depth? What kind of challenges does that present? Because if you look at the Dallas game, it all seemed fine and dandy early, and they were having to make some adjustments defensively. They were moving the ball up and down the field, but all of a sudden the wheels fell off the wagon. Well, what happens when you find teams that consistently will be able to sustain drives and put up points and make plays happen, right? And you don't have the room for error. So I just, that's when I look at it. I look at the big picture. I look at the granularity of it and say, we're looking at it game by game by game. Absolutely. You don't skip ahead. But I also look at it and say, hey, I got to look ahead and see, are we moving at the same pace as those other teams that we know are going to be the ones we're going to eventually face if we get into the postseason play?
Yeah. So, Herm, that's why I was looking while you were saying that. I was just looking up to see. So our kryptonite, I think the only thing that can be our kryptonite is probably two things. One, you got to stop our run game. That's how teams have to. If we got to stop their run game, David Montgomery in particular, we got to stop that run game. And two, where Jared is going to be at, and that's get to Jared. Because he's inside the pocket. He's not a mobile guy, so if you could get to him, he's going to, he'll be an easier target to get to. I look at the teams, and if you saying NFC or it doesn't matter. Baltimore Ravens, they're number one. okay, versus the run. Minnesota Vikings, they're number 2 versus the run. And then you have the Detroit Lions at number 3. Okay, again, we face Minnesota next week. That's going to be a great test because they're going to be able to, kind of they want to slow down our run game. And they know everything's predicated off our run game. So I would say that's the one kryptonite that if against us is a team that can stop the run and a team that can stop us from running the ball would have success against us, or could very well have success against us. And again, like they say, iron strengthens iron, Herm. I mean, they got to go through these tests. I mean, they got to go through and to me, the sooner you go through them, you start learning things about yourselves, the better, that you can start working on those things that you need to work on to get better as the season progresses along, and that you hope that you could stay healthy. I mean, that was the key thing we talked about coming into the season, is health. That's something that can't be controlled, and we know it's something that happens every year in the NFL. Man, people are gonna get hurt, and it can change what you're doing and can change the trajectory of your organization. So we see that with Aidan. So I'll just go back to say, like I say again, with what we did against Dallas, with how clean. My question to you would be, man, Herm, I know I would love to. Man, how would you love to be in Ben Johnson's offense, man? Man, it's just so crazy what they come up with, man, splitting tackles way out in the, outlet wide and actually throwing the ball to him. You got Panay Sewell coming around, and I mean, it's just unbelievable what Ben Johnson does and how creative he is with that team and what he allows them to do.
I'll say this, and then I'm gonna do like I just told you. I'm gonna reel it back just a little bit. It felt like preseason. I'll be very honest.
Okay.
And it felt like this was a team. I looked at the body language of the Cowboy players. They gave up, man. And we know what players look like when they give up. I look at the secondary. I look at those players after they started getting behind, when they saw the offense was basically defense giving up on their offense. Dallas defense had given up on their offense, that they had no chance of stopping. They were basically thinking, we're going to have to stop the Lions offense every single drive and keep them from scoring. Otherwise, if they score, we don't have an answer for that. The secondary, you could see their faces. You could see the head drop. You could see the confusion of who's supposed to be where and covering who, and just the frustration of the lack of communication. And it was just a mess. And then you see another offensive unit and a defensive unit. They're having fun. I mean, they are not even seeing this as a serious game, and they're playing inside of a beautiful big stadium. They have the energy. They're on the road. They're inside of the conference. Okay. And yet they're playing, they're throwing to tack, they throwing not just once to a lineman.
Mm-hmm.
They're throwing 2-3 times at linemen, right? They're doing all type of plays. They're doing flea flickers. They're doing hook and laterals. They're doing all kinds of things that wasn't even really necessary, but they were doing it. Know why? Because they could.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to face teams that are going to make you have to play disciplined football for the entire game, for 60 minutes, then that's when you start to see you won't I don't think you'll see the same as what you see there. Right?
That was revenge.
I know it was. I know that was
revenge,
personal. It was personal.
Listen, how you feel
I have
about
a problem
Dallas?
with it.
How you feel about Dallas?
But listen, I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't.
Okay.
I know I got some friends there. I got some people there that I'm still cool with, whatever. And we were going back and forth. I won't say who they were. There's some high, known get Cowboys. But listen, it was fun. And then I look at it, and all I'm going to say, when you talk about that run game, confidence. When they were going downhill, they were attacking that line so fast. When Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, when they were handing the ball off, I mean, they were attacking and getting on those linebackers so fast. Linemen didn't even have a chance to make tackles at the line of scrimmage. It was going to be linebackers or safeties. And then when you look at the passing game, it opens up the play action. Play action, Jared Goff had time, man. He was just picking them apart left and right. Beautiful passes. They started to rotate in a lot of their different playmakers. We hadn't seen, the big play receivers. We've seen Jamison Williams catch ball on the run. We've seen him being more the deep threat. But all of a sudden you start bringing in and saying, you know what? We're going to get the ball to our tight end. We're going to get the ball to our big, taller, big body.
Tim Patrick.
With Patrick, right? So they get Patrick, and they're going to get the big body receivers passes. Then, you know what? They're like it's almost like a slap in the face. We're not even going to need to use St. Brown as much. And if we do, he's just going to keep picking us up first down after first down after first down, doing what he does. And it was like toying around with him. But you talked about the Ravens, Minnesota, and then the Lions in their run defense, right? Attacking the run. Now I go, how are they against the pass? Because other teams are going to be looking at that's taking your, they got 7-8 yards a run, but that's not going to be expected every game. Sometimes you're going to be in that 3-4 yard piece.
Right.
So you're going to have to hit some of those big plays. I don't think it's going to be that easy against some of these other teams. It's just not going to be. They're going to be a little bit more disciplined in the secondary. Those chunk plays, they're going to have to work their way down the field. So now we're in the drives, which means you're going to have to dial up the right plays. You're going to have to do the right things. You have to make down and distance manageable. And with that, you're going to have other teams that are going to really test your secondary and force you into man. Because now if you don't have an Aidan Hutchinson or you don't have that pressure from the outside edge, and you got quarterbacks that have time and they have home run hitting receivers who play all parts of the tree, of the passing tree, it spells problems and trouble. And then when you put that in and you have multiple players that they can go to, it becomes a problem. So that's all I'm saying. It's like, so when we look at that, that's all I'm saying. When I look at this, let's look at Dallas, not as a throwaway game, but as a game that I picked the Lions to win by a minimum of 20 points for this game. Yeah. Because I just did, if you go back and you look at what's happened with Dallas, you can see the trajectory, as you mentioned, of where they were going. It was more about how will this team handle? They checked the box for me saying, you know what? They weren't going to have a letdown, and they beat the brakes off of them exactly the way they were supposed to. So kudos. I think that this is a team that is firing on all cylinders. And I just want to see now what happens when they play teams like Minnesota and others. You can't expect 40-point blowouts or 30-point blowouts, right? But you want to see that they can now manage the multidiscipline teams offensively and defensively, right? Yeah. That can match you firepower and can match you defensively.
Well, Herm, I think the biggest thing facing the Lions moving forward is our division. Man,
yeah, it's tough.
Outside our division, man, think about it. It's a scenario where all 4 teams can get in the playoffs this year. You know what I'm saying? All 4 teams out of our division can get in the playoffs. So we got a bloodbath that's coming up soon. I mean, again, we haven't played in the divisional teams yet.
There's still 8 games to be played.
There you go. So that's where I think the true test is going to come in with the Lions. Yeah, we got San Francisco. We got some other teams outside of our division that we have to play and everything. But I think the dogfight is going to be within our division this year. Like I say, it's a scenario where you're looking at where all 4 teams could get in, because the only ones that can really spoil the party, I think, would be Tampa Bay and, I mean, maybe Seattle. I don't know. But it ain't too many other teams, I think, outside of that may be able to get into the playoffs playing. And then you said something about pass. The first NFC team that come in is Chicago. They're ranked number 6 against the pass. So, Herm, so you got, you know what I'm saying, you got Minnesota number 2 against the run. You got Chicago number 6 against the pass. Well, again, right in our division. These are the teams that we're going to have to face. And then you look at versus the pass with Detroit, we rank 27th right now.
Right.
You know, and again,
that's my concern.
Yeah.
And I look at the teams that they're facing. Green Bay, they have running and receiving.
Yeah.
You look at Minnesota, they're competent at running football. They have receivers, right? Chicago, they got some players who can make plays and in the passing game. All right. So they're going to be faced with some teams that are going to present problems to them if from a passing piece. So when you start to lose pieces and you start to take pieces off the puzzle, especially some of your big chess pieces, it weakens the secondary. We already knew that they were struggling if there's time. You got the two best safeties in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
You have hands down. I mean, these guys are playing unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
With Joseph and
you talking about
and Branch, right?
Branch,
Yeah. And so these guys are playing just phenomenal. And the problem comes in is when they get into man coverage or they have to chase down guys, and teams are going to take shots. I mean, if you look at it, teams, Dallas just didn't have the firepower to do it.
Yeah.
And once you start factoring in tight ends, we start to see that and how that started to affect, the linebackers. You had a couple early holding penalties, but I just don't think they're used to having to cover that much that often. So now I think there's going to be stress that's going to be placed on that defense to do even more. So that's something to watch as we go down the stretch. Not overly concerned, but I do think that you have to look at, like, again, some of these teams that are multidimensional, that have both offense, have solid defenses, but they have high power offenses, I think will give this team problems until they can really solidify that defense a little bit more.
Yeah, the mirror image is that, like I say, we're ranked 27th in pass. Minnesota's ranked 30th versus the pass. So again, if we're gonna have to try to establish the ball, because like you're saying, that's when Jarrett's at his best, man. When we got the running game going, because again, and when they broke him down, talking about Jarrett, when they broke him down, I mean, Herm, that's hard when you turn your back to the defense and then having to kind of readjust your eyes and focus back in. And especially with how these defenses are now, when they change it up, they can show you a man first, and then as soon as the ball snaps, they might drop back into a zone. Or you got these linemen that drop into zone blitzes where they're dropping back into coverage. So not only do you have to worry about a linebacker and the DB, you got to worry about the defensive lineman getting his hands up and getting in your passing lane and possibly intercept the thing. So, it'd just be interesting to see how, this shakes out this week moving forward, especially, like I say, against this tough test that they got coming up. But like you said, man, they did everything they needed to do against Dallas. That's what they were supposed to do against Dallas. They took care of their business. Like I say, just the biggest thing is the Aidan Hutchinson injury coming out of this. What do we do? What does Brad Holmes do? As you know, like you said earlier, he was on that phone as soon as he found out about that injury. He was on the phone making calls. How Herm, they got the one board with the guys they got up there, but you always got that contingency board, the other guys that you want to call and everything. So to me, it'll see how big of a splash they go, because we're third in cap room. So they got the money to spend and go get somebody if they need to. So we're good cap-wise. So it just depends on what Brad, and like Dan and them always says, it has to be the right fit. It has to be the right fit. What would be the best scenario, Herm, is if James Houston, you know what I'm saying, Pascal, some of those guys we got now, those guys could just say, okay, this is my job. This is an opportunity. I'm going to take this job. And if they could step up and fill the void, but like I say, we'll see.
But typically that's what you're looking for. You try and find, the player that's already on the roster that, just you have enough depth. But I just think that, if those are the players that they could have gone to, we would have seen a lot more out of those players at this point. So I really would be surprised if they haven't already, they're on the phones, they're busy, they're making calls, and then we start to hear an announcement pretty soon about a direction in which they're going to take. Now there are some players out there that potentially they could go after, that they could pick up. But again, it goes back down to the chemistry of this team and whether or not they're going to be a good fit. Because right now, defensively, what I guess the saving grace of that is, if you can find a talented player, if you can find a player that brings that motor that you need to replace the one that you're going to have out for a little bit, then what that role has been. It's disruption. It's been disruption from Aidan. It's been getting pressure on the quarterback. It's getting in their face. It's playing the scheme that allows them to play these different packages or to force teams offensively, they have to change their package because of the disruption. So if they can get that from any player that they pick up, they can do a plug and play.
But Herm, don't you think they got, but that's what they had been getting up until this year. The one thing that Aidan seemed like he had been doing this year was finishing. Man, remember last year? Think about last year. Remember the 97-yard, the 91-yard at the CD Lamb? Remember, we blitzed. We had that. They let that get out, threw it to CD Lamb. You know, it was 91 yards. A whole bunch of that. Remember early in this year, with Baker and some of them quarterbacks, right? We get to them, we ain't finishing them, and they've been able to extend the play. Aidan was finishing this year. It was just him, but at least he was finishing, you know, and stuff. And that's what, man, we got to have, because you're not talking, like you said, we're not talking playoffs, right? We talking Super Bowl. If you're going to be a Super Bowl team, you got to finish. You ain't going to be able to just get pressure and get hits on some of these good quarterbacks, Herm. We talking about who we're getting ready to face in the future now. You already said these teams, we're going to face some good teams, man. Just getting pressure and hitting them quarterbacks ain't going to be enough. So, we're going to have, I think we're going to have to get an impact guy. Like you said, ain't on the roster, but it's going to have to be a finisher, man. At least for this year.
It's going to have to be more than one player, though, Lo. You know, I get that. You know, they got to get pressure on the ends. You got to squeeze pockets. You got to bring players in that can, you know, you can get pressure from one and you can negate that guy by rolling out, rolling away, or doing, you know, quick plays in terms of the passing game and so on and so forth. And if you don't have kind of a duality that's happening where you have pressure, where the pocket gets squeezed and then you're getting a little bit of pressure, or you're getting a very solid push from the interior linemen that are pushing that pocket back or causing that quarterback to have to reset, it's all for naught, because it's one player. Like we get that, but I'm saying they're going to have to still find depth. You could bring in one player to replace Hutchinson, but even if you do that, you're still going to have the same scenario you had before. All you've done is you've put back a threat that you lost on defense, but you still haven't solved the problem, which means we got to collapse pockets. Now they're getting pressure up front. You know, when you look at Reader, when you look at some of the other guys, they are getting some push. They're getting some. They're able to get in there and disrupt that. So quarterbacks aren't stepping up quite as much as they've been able to, and the pocket is collapsing at times. But when we get those mobile quarterbacks and they're able to get outside the pocket faster, or they all of a sudden do some type of a sprint out and then reset, the linemen are just not fast enough to get over there. So they're buying times, and then they're creating lanes, because now it's the spacing's off, right? When you on the defensive side, you're collapsing, but then once the quarterback gets outside of it, these guys have to, now they're kind of on their own. You know, you got to have to almost try to tackle out in space. So it becomes a little bit more difficult for them. And then you got your defensive back that are chasing, and we know they get a little handsy out there at times. So
that was good to see on that point.
Absolutely.
It was good to see them play clean this game. Well, they let them get away with a lot in the first half.
They've getting away with a lot, man. Listen, there's so much pass interference in this NFL right now. From not only, I'm going to be fair on this one, from receivers pushing and grabbing on the jerseys of the defensive backs, to the defensive backs grabbing helmets and around throats, and it's a lot going on. And then you'll see a bump, and they call pass interference. I don't get it, man. And it's just the NFL really needs to address that. That's a huge issue that I see. But
Herm, they got to address it with another thing we could talk about with the officials. And I talked, and maybe that's who I don't know. He can't say much, but you know, Sean Smith is a great friend of mine. And, you know, Sean me and him talked this all season. We had lunch, and he was saying, man, they got a shortage of NFL officials. And a lot of their officials that's in the league now, they're older guys, and they're having to transition those guys out and bring in younger people, but it's not there. The talent pool isn't there right now. So you compound that problem with the game getting faster, guys getting bigger, stronger, you know what I'm saying? You compounding the problem. But I see why New York went to the replay booth. They got people up there watching it to try to speed it along. But
with the eye in the sky. Yeah, but I know that, to your point, and I don't want to get off subject so we can start to wrap. You know, why not just go get former, whether it be coaches, players, younger people who played in the league, who played at that level and the collegiate level, start recruiting those guys to become officials because they know what to look at. They know where you're, they know, I know as a receiver, at which parts of the route there starts to be contact. Yeah. And I know the tactics that are being used. So I think you almost find players and you recruit them and you get them ready to become those next level officials that then have a sharper eye and they're looking for, because they know where we do our dirt, as you will.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
As players.
That's a good.
That's every play. That's everyone across the league, right? That's every player across the board. So that's something to look at. You know me, I'm always trying to innovate within things that we do. So I say that's the next route. That's the next wave. But any thoughts, Lo, as we wrap up, as far as this upcoming game, Minnesota Vikings? Any do's or don'ts? What do you see? You know, we don't have to necessarily give predictions, but what do you see as being keys to the Lions right now in their game against Minnesota on the road?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little earlier when we talked about the run defense and their pass defense and ours. And again, man, for the Lions, I think it's more the same, Herm. To me, it's more the same. You just keep what I think they'll do. I think right now, and just personally, I think they're feeling confident, right? I think the play callers, everybody's feeling good about themselves. So now I think Ben Johnson even more, Herm, and you'll know better than I think he starts adding on to the playbook a little bit more. I think he starts bringing some stuff that we worked on during training camp. Start trying to bring that and incorporate more different things in. I think he expands the playbook more with Jared, puts more things on Jared play because Jared's playing at such a high level. He's got to be so confident with the way he's playing right now. So I think that's the evolution that this team is going to start taking, not just on offense. I think defense too. Maybe not defense because of Hutchinson being out now. Just such a big piece that we lost. Maybe they kind of keep things where it is now, just master what they're doing. But even special teams, special teams was big. We didn't talk about that. But Bates 4 for 4 with field goals, that's huge. Because I think the more Dan feel confidence in him, I think some of the decisions that Dan will make going on I think he'll make more decisions with the kicker in mind that he could get points. He won't have that fear of not getting the points with the kicker. So Herm, to me, more the same. Just keep adding on, just keep building on, keep executing, and just see where things fall at. But it's going to be a tough test up there in Minneapolis.
I agree with several of those points, and I think looking at just the offensive side, what the Lions are going to have to do is, I think, continue to really run the football. I mean, Minnesota is going to give them a little bit of a challenge in running the football. I think you definitely utilize the pass to open up the run. If you're going to go against, typically that's the way it works. If you have a stronger defensive team against your strength, which is the running game, then typically you'll take advantage of the pass. And being that Minnesota is so at the bottom there towards the bottom of the NFL in terms of pass defense, that becomes an area of opportunity for the Lions to really, really get them on their heels, to make them have to commit more people into the secondary. But to your point on the play calling, I don't think they've gone in deep into the playbook right now in terms of things they need to do. I think they're tinkering with some things. And I know that a lot of times coaches will take advantage of opportunities, especially when you have them in games that are out of reach a little bit, and you try plays in real life situations that you want to just get it on film, even if it doesn't work, because that way it lets you see how teams play it. It lets you see what you can do to make it better. I think they're going to adjust that offense based on what they've seen in Minnesota's previous games. That's when you do your playbook adjustment. There are plays you go to that that will attack the vulnerabilities of that defense. And that's what I look to see them in terms of how that playbook gets assembled this week, is based on where they see the areas of opportunity for Minnesota, and then also looking at tendencies. There's so much statistics and analytics that are out there nowadays to get tendencies and habits that you can break teams down a lot faster, and you can get into your actual game planning a lot sooner. So that's what I see. And then offensively, they're going to need defensively to stop Minnesota's big plays down the field. A lot of the play action, a lot of those second and third level passes. Minnesota is not really doing a ton in the short passing game. They're really looking to get their players the ball on the run. They don't do a lot of possession style routes. But for the most part, this team's going to get challenged in the secondary. I think they're going to attack down the field. But, when you got the safeties, I think that keeps them at bay. So I look at those shorter to mid-range passes for Minnesota to try and loosen up and get those safeties to commit down a little bit so they can try and get over the top. Otherwise, it's going to be a long game. But Minnesota's running game is going to be key. And I think they're going to attack the area where there's a void, and that's going to be the side wherever Aidan Hutchinson would have been. And I think you're going to see them trying to attack that a lot more.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. As you see,
sir.
I got our Herman Lo at the back, man. I got our
man.
Minnesota picture. Let people see that one, man.
Yeah, I need some of those, Herm, so I can put them up.
There it is. Hey, you think the lady gonna be singing? We know we pulling her off stage.
The fat lady too. I like the size of her too.
She just thick with it, man. That's all. Why you gotta call her fat, man? She just
hey, you then you get that picture design. Then you tell that man what size woman you want to put on that picture.
Man, what is wrong with you?
Did you say thick?
Man,
did you use the word thick with Larry Dodge, the creator?
I know what, I left that to the artist's discretion. You know what? He's pulling the singing lady off the stage, and you and I are there. That's it. Okay. You pulling the rug from up under her, and I got the stick right there snatching her. Well, that's it.
Well, I know how detailed you are, Herman J. Moore. So I would be very surprised if you didn't have any input in what size that woman was going to be.
I 100% had input.
Yeah.
But
okay.
As always, man, I appreciate you, big bro. And we'll come back. We'll break bread again, and we'll see what the Lions do this weekend against Minnesota.